You feel like you're falling out of your own life, like the world is still moving, but you're no longer part of it. The people around you laugh. They make plans. They follow rules that no longer make sense. And you wonder, what happened to me? When did I stop belonging? But maybe it's not that you broke. Maybe it's that you woke. Maybe this fracture you're feeling isn't a sign of failure, but the first ripple of remembrance. Because something ancient inside you knows. You weren't meant to numb yourself to survive. You weren't meant to wear a mask so perfect it suffocates the soul beneath it. This disconnection, it's not your weakness, it's your soul rejecting the false. The old skin no longer fits, and now it begins to peel. And yes, it hurts, because everything that once felt safe is crumbling. But what's crumbling was never real, and the ache you feel, that's not confusion, that's truth, arriving without apology. The moment you feel lost is the moment the map you've been handed no longer leads anywhere. And that's not the end, that's the beginning. The old self doesn't go quietly, it clings, it negotiates, it pleads, it tells you you're crazy for wanting more. It begs you to stay in the version of you that made others comfortable. But your soul has other plans. You see, the collapse you fear is sacred. It's not destruction. It's clearing the lies you wore as identity, the dreams that were never yours, the expectations stitched into your skin. Yes, it feels like death, because in a way it is. The death of the obedient version of you, the agreeable, smile and command, fit in at all costs self. And that death, it is holy, because you were never meant to shrink to be loved, to silence your fire for peace, to perform just to be accepted by those who never saw you anyway. The collapse is necessary. It clears the altar, it burns the false offerings, it leaves nothing untouched. And in that ruin, that sacred stillness, something begins. Not louder, not shinier, not more impressive, but real. You didn't come here to pretend, you came to remember. And everything that breaks is only the part of you that was never true to begin with. There's a space between versions of yourself, a no man's land, a soul limbo, where you're no longer who you were, but not yet who you're becoming. That space is silent and terrifying, and it will ask you to sit in it without escape. This is the void. No guidance, no roadmap, no signs from the universe. Just stillness, just silence, just you. And this is where most turn back, because the ego panics without identity. Because when the masks fall off, you don't recognize your own face. And so you try to rebuild the old self, reconstruct the prison, return to the comfort of unconsciousness. But something in you knows that would be a betrayal. So you sit and you wait, and in time you hear it. Not a voice, not a message, but a frequency, a deep pulse that says, "Be here." Because the void isn't empty, it's the womb, and every real rebirth begins in the dark. There comes a point when the world no longer entertains you. The noise dulls, the rush loses flavor, and the life you built on autopilot begins to feel like a costume that never fit. This is the call, not a trumpet in the sky, not a vision, just a quiet ache that grows louder. It says, there's more than checklists, more than performance, more than being liked. You start seeing through the scripts, the smiles, the games. You stop chasing, not out of apathy, but because the chase itself begins to feel like forgetting. And now, you're being asked to remember the version of you that existed before you were taught who to be, before you edited your fire to fit in, before you learned to call survival success. This call doesn't demand, it invites. And you don't answer it with a yes. You answer it with your presence. One breath, one truth, one step closer to the you that never needed to be fixed. The world doesn't fear your weakness, it fears your power, because a soul on fire can't be manipulated, can't be sold to, can't be silenced. You start to see this clearly when you awaken. The systems weren't built for truth. They were built to maintain order at any cost. And so, they trained you to shrink, to doubt, to chase validation, to silence the voice within you and worship the noise outside. But now, that voice is rising, and the world gets uncomfortable, not because you're wrong, but because you remind them of what they forgot, of what they buried, of what still burns quietly inside them, but they're not ready to face. Your presence triggers the slumbering, because light doesn't just illuminate, it confronts, but don't dim, don't fold. Your awakening isn't a rebellion, it's a remembrance. And nothing terrifies a system of control more than a being who has remembered their sovereignty. They told you truth lives in books, in leaders, in systems, but you're beginning to feel it in your bones. Real truth doesn't need proof. It resonates, it vibrates, it burns. And once you've touched it, you can't unknow it, even if you pretend. You no longer need permission to be what you are. No longer seek approval to speak what you know. Because inner authority isn't loud, it's calm, rooted, unshakable. You stop arguing with people who've never met themselves. You stop explaining truth to those still devoted to illusion. And in the silence, you grow louder. This is sovereignty, not pride, not dominance, but the quiet knowing that you are enough and that your compass was never broken. It was buried, but now it points inward. And from here, you don't follow, you lead yourself. Power isn't something you gain, it's something you uncover, something you remember. It's been there, under the apologies, under the conditioning, under the fear. They told you power looks like control, domination, noise, but your power whispers. It lives in your eyes when you see clearly, in your voice when you speak truth without trembling, in your spine when you stop apologizing for taking up space. This power doesn't need to be seen, it needs to be lived, honored, trusted. It returns when you stop outsourcing your worth, when you stop asking the world to tell you who you are, when you stand, not above others, but beside yourself fully. Now that the dust has settled, now that the masks have cracked, you finally see you were never lost, you were diverted, you were never broken, you were buried. And now you don't need a map, because the path was never outside of you. It was under every step you took, even in the wrong direction. Now you walk. Not because you're certain, but because you're aligned. You don't follow signs, you become one. And the world, it still won't understand. That's okay. You didn't come here to be understood. You came here to walk, to burn, to remember, to become. And so you rise, not to prove, not to please, but to return to the place you never truly left, yourself.